Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We might make a start. Welcome to the Georges River Local Planning Panel meeting of the 20th of June 2019. This panel has been appointed by the Minister for Planning and the Council to determine certain types of development applications and modification applications, which are on the agenda before us today. We also must abide by the Code of Conduct, which is been promulgated under the Planning and Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. My name is Paul Bogotis. I'm the chairperson for today's panel meeting, and the other panellist with me to my right is Mr. Michael Levy. He's one of our expert members. To my immediate left is Mr. John Brockhoff. He's also an expert member, and to my far left is Mr. George Vardis, our community representative. I'm obliged to advise you that this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings will be available to be heard on the Council's website. Any part of this meeting that's held in the closed section won't be recorded. So when speaking on a matter before the panel, any person registered to make submissions must ensure their oral presentations are respectful and appropriate language is used at all times. Any person using defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may be exposed to personal liability, which this panel or the Council takes no responsibility for. At today's meeting, we'll consider one development application and one modification application. The panel has, prior to this meeting today, undertaken site inspections of both sites for each of the applications before us, and upon request, we've visited adjoining properties where it was appropriate to do so. So the consideration of those matters in order will be the development application for the dual occupancy at 87 Warrenora Parade Oatley, and then followed by the modification application for alterations and additions to an existing or partially constructed dwelling house at 42 Carwar Avenue, Cars Park. As required by the Code of Conduct, panellists are required to disclose any pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests in relation to any matter on today's agenda that is to be considered. The prescribed conflict of interest forms issued by the Department of Planning have been completed by each panellist for each of the items on today's agenda. These forms are now tabled and are available for public scrutiny during the meeting, and they'll also be available for viewing on the Council's website, and there are the forms. As we progress through the agenda, those persons that have been registered to speak will only be permitted to make oral submissions to the panel. Though, of course, as the chairperson, I may exercise discretion to overrule this restriction or allow any unregistered person to make a submission. Submitters making submissions will be given 3 minutes to speak, though, again, as chairperson, I may permit extra time where appropriate to do so. Submitters are reminded to be clear and concise, and please speak into the microphone because it needs to be picked up by the recording. And if possible, don't repeat matters that previous submitters have already covered. Once all submitters on all matters of the agenda have concluded, the panel will adjourn for its closed session to deliberate and make determinations in relation to the development application and the modification application. The determinations of the panel will be recorded in the minutes, which will be available on the Council's website. Finally, all those that have mobile phones, can you please put them on silent or turn them off, if you wouldn't mind. So I'll now call the first item on the agenda, which is the development application of the dual occupancy at 87 Warrenora Parade, Oatley. And we have four persons registered to make submissions. The first one is Phil Perkins. Mr. Perkins, are you here?
Yeah, that's how are you?
I'm sorry. Sorry, pardon me. Michael Hall. Mr. Hall, please come forward. If you could just speak clearly into the microphone for us.
Okay.
Wall's all yours.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Hall. I've lived next door at 89 Warrenora for 27 years. A deciding factor at the time to purchase my property was that it was in a forestry protection zone and dual occupancies were not allowed. I understand that's changed. Safe in this knowledge, we built our dream home and raised our family there, and we're here today to remind you that what you are deciding today will affect our future as to where we live. The council's assessment has been very thorough, so I just want to add a few little corrections and a little bit of history. The first thing, after living here for some time, it became obvious of a rising damp problem caused by natural watercourse running under our home. 10 years ago, we added 3 downstairs windows that helped add more light and ventilation, which improved the problem. Council has pointed out these windows will not see sunlight during the winter for 3 months if this project goes ahead. So we know that our damp problem will return and affect our health. On the plan on the north wall of our house, we wonder why the developer shows the louvered wall on our outdoor kitchen as being solid brick. This is a misrepresentation, as our outdoor kitchen area and veranda will be level with the development outdoor area and with it easy listing distance and affecting our living amenity and privacy again and sunlight in this area. We spend our evenings during the summer at in our outdoor kitchen. So basically I'm saying their outdoor kitchen is 2 metres from our outdoor kitchen and there's only a louvered window between us on the same level. The next thing, the angle of the driveway has always been a major issue at both my place and 87. I've seen numerous vehicles towed out of 87 over the years, including an ambulance one evening because it's too steep. The plan shows the street view from the boundary line, but not the RL from the street down to the front boundary line. I haven't seen no plan yet that meets any sort of code. My concern is that to make the driveway work, the builder will raise the RL above the maximum building height, thus increasing the shadow of the property even further. I believe this is what occurred at 79A recently to make the driveway work. So basically up the street they had the same problem and then suddenly, by mistake, they built the property a metre higher than what it was going to be on the plans. And if that happens to us, our total house will be shadowed, not just 3/4 of it. Now the next thing is, when standing at our front door, we'll be looking at a 7 metre high wall leading to the street. It's actually will be shadowing the Mariah hedge that we took 25 years to grow, and when it dies, the plans don't show that there'll be a fence or anything to rectify the problem, adding to our loss amenity again. We have a sitting area up the front there, there's a hedge, that hedge will be gone. Now the last thing, the landscape plan shows 2 shade trees to be planted on the fence line at the rear right hand side of the property that will grow out and shade our pool, and it also drop foliage directly into our pool. So in summary, the development is oversized and out of character for surrounding homes. There are building limits set for very good reasons by people a lot smarter than me. So we ask that developers submit a more reasonable design plan within the rules. We're not against the development, we're against it being oversized and outside the rules.
All right, thank you. Just remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions of the panel. I do have one question to ask you with respect to your submission about the driveway grade.
Yep.
If I show you that plan there, you referred to the RL from the street. And you'll see that that plan there shows an invert level near the word Warrenora, where your thumb is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your calculation of the distance or the grade from there? Where you're pointing?
I measured from there to there
Yep.
at 2.8 metres.
Yep.
We took a level laser out to the land, and that is a 2.3 metre drop. That's almost a 45-degree ramp.
Right.
And then when you get to the street, with your building code, you've got to go up and then down. The vehicle will get caught, and I know that because that's what happened at my place. And we had to pull the driveway out and do it again.
Sorry, could I just confirm you were saying 2.3 metres from the gutter to the front boundary?
No, you got from the gutter
Yeah.
to what you would think would be the normal end of the footpath.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so it goes up, and then from that point down to the boundary line, it's over 2 metre drop, and it's about 3, so it's almost 45-degree angle down to this point where they show the driveway.
Our rough calculations are around about 34-35%.
Yeah. So it's not
Okay.
possible for a car to go up and over. And my concern is to fix that, they'll
Gotta go up.
suddenly raise the whole thing, and it'll be 2 metres above the maximum building height, and they'll be looking at a 9-metre brick wall instead of a 7-metre brick wall. The last developer sold the property because he couldn't fix the driveway, and the previous owner sold the property because he couldn't fix the driveway. This is the third person that's trying to put a driveway in there.
All right, thank you. I'll just see if there are any other further questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, speaking on behalf of the applicant is Dr. Chen. Please come forward now. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
If you could just speak clearly into the microphone.
Well, I've got some handouts if you want to refer to.
Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
Basically, I'm just going to quickly go through
Please speak.
the...
Yeah, thank you. Just pull it back if you could.
Yeah, better. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'm the designer of these dwellings. So our client came to us, wants to design a duplex. We started with a detached duplex, which is required by DCP. The outcome wasn't like too impressive, not desirable, I'd say, because being attached, it's very bulky. And compared to the rest of the house on the street, it's a bit too much. That's why we approached the detached duplex option. I'm just gonna quickly go through the report, the items that are not compliant. The first is LEP, the landscape percentage. On the drawing we submitted, it states 25% landscape area, which complies with this LEP requirement. As the handout I just passed, the assessment officer apparently look at the front, which was highlighted, because our landscape designer put some stepping stone there. So if he exclude that bit, it's actually down to 23%, where it says no here, but that could be easily, because the second page is actually our drawing showing the green ones. Sorry, it's not that. Maybe the one after.
So we're still talking about landscape?
Landscape, yes. Yeah, here. That one, the area calculation, the one after. The third page, sorry, the third page, yeah. The two green bit at the front.
Okay.
Yeah, because we designed that to be landscaped area. While landscape architect, when he put some stepping stone, it was excluded from office's calculation. But the stepping stones are not necessary. Could be easily just replaced by ground covering or lawn. And that's the only one not complying with LEP. With the DCP, there was the height requirement. The overall height is 8.2 meter, which we comply. With the wall height, floor to ceiling, the maximum wall height, yes, we exceed about 600. That was because the character of the site is so steep. So with that nature of the land, we exceed that 600, but still within the maximum height of the building. There is a
Please continue. Okay.
sorry, there is the floor to ceiling height, which says we have a 4 meter, exceeds the maximum 3.6. That's only the foyer, that's only the entry, because the side, the whole building is actually going down. From the street, we can only see the first floor of the building, the front. That is the reason we increased the foyer to 4 meter, just to address to the streetscape being more of identity of its own. Then the parapet height, I believe it's a typo, because we have 450 on the amended drawing. It clearly says it is 450, complies with DCP. Maybe the officer just misread it. So that's the height. Then another one is the garage setback. The garage setback is more than enough from the front boundary. What we didn't comply is the front door being recessed behind the garage. But again, we have pergola, we have the awning coming out of the garage to address the entry. It will cast nice shadow, and being a long foyer leading after, go past the garage, architecturally just not acceptable. Then the driveway gradient. I've attached a section here on the handout, which is probably the second or third page. I've consulted with the traffic engineer, and he
Let's
has,
take us to that. Now,
yeah,
obviously that's of great concern.
yes, I understand the concern.
And have you had an engineer, traffic engineer, run the grade on a B85 old vehicle?
Yeah, I spoke to him, and he's willing to certify. He said it could work, because according to Australian standard, when the site is steep, it could work with engineer's help. The overall, is a gradient, because the most steep site, the bit is actually within council's land. When it's past the front boundary, it goes much better. And on that council's land, there is no footpath. It's just grass.
All right, so if I show you your cross section,
Yeah.
where's the actual road pavement? You draw on it.
That's the curb line.
So that's the curb.
Is actually somewhere there, but there is no footpath here.
So no
Really steep. Yeah. And
What garage does this run into? Dwelling 1 or 2?
this is the steeper side, which is on the
The eastern side.
eastern, is the, sorry, I have to say from the landscape, it's the,
Southern side.
Southern side?
it's the upper one,
This one?
it's this one,
North.
it's this one, because the road going down that way.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, the other one would be better.
All right, so this is the worst scenario, this
Yes,
one,
it
this one.
is, yes,
So that's the northern one.
yes. The engineer is willing to
So we've
fine
got
tuning the
13%, 23%, and then 13%.
Degrees,
Oh, the degrees, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is actually, the steepest bit's 28% though.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, over the whole length is 28%. Rule of thumb. No, just sorry, back of the envelope on this.
engineer can, yeah, fine tune it and certify.
Could I just ask, when you say the engineer could fine tune,
Traffic engineer.
what are they suggesting they could do to improve the grades?
He said the 13% should change to some other percentage, like that it would work.
What
Yeah.
does that mean?
It means that it will give us a smoother transition, not scraping the bottom of the car.
And we don't know what that grade might be.
I think he says 2 degrees less or more. I can't remember, sorry.
Yeah, well,
'Cause I'm-
unfortunately,
yeah.
this is one of the issues that we have, is that the accuracy of these cross sections.
I mean, if it's a DA condition, it comes as a DA condition, we'll definitely get a proper certificate from the engineer.
Okay, sorry, you continue.
Okay, so that's that one. Then the next one is cut and fill limited to 600, while ours is maximum 830. It was less fill, the first draft. We're trying to lower the whole house down, which caused a bit more problem of the driveway, just to lower the house down to have less impact to the neighbor, according to the neighbor's objection. Unfortunately, I don't think I can do too much to optimize that cut and fill being 200 mil more than the maximum. Then they'll down to the street facade. The 2 dwellings have different color scheme and a different treatment of the entry. One is more horizontal, one is more vertical. With the garage door, we are intending to use the flushed garage door system, which is going to be the same finishes with the wall. It will look like a nice feature, solid wall. It's an architectural language, but I think it will work nicely being a contemporary style. And the occupants are definitely not gonna go to the wrong dwelling, mistaken their home being to us similar as that. So that's that. The next one is the landscaped area, which I have addressed. Yeah. So the outbuilding being slightly higher than the maximum height, that could be easily cut back down to 3 meters or removed totally. I don't think our client will object too much to that cabana being issued. The top of the pool, the next one is about the swimming pool. Again, I think it was misread. The drawing was misread. Our pool is very close to the ground level. The same 1 meter above the natural ground level. It probably just taken the pool fencing as a lifted pool.
All right.
So that's the pool issue. The pool was designed on the other side next to the neighbor in the first draft. We taken the objections of the submissions being like maybe being too noisy or being too close to the neighbor. Now it has been flipped to the inside. And we put privacy screen on the side of the deck. So from all these changes, I think the privacy issue has been addressed with the amended drawing. Once you look at it, amended, the first draft with the swimming pool on the southern boundary and the north boundary. Now it's sort of inside.
All right. So is that your submission, Mayor?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's all I want to say.
Well, we'll just see if there's any further questions of the panel. Mr. Levy?
Yes, on that question of privacy, how are you maintaining privacy between the 2 dwellings?
These 2 dwellings.
And particularly the alfresco areas, the pool areas and balcony areas?
The pool area should be fine because we'll have the fencing between the two dwellings.
So the boundary fencing?
Yes, the boundary fence,
So what height will that be?
1.8 to 2.4.
And the pool itself is 1 metre above ground level?
Yeah, that's what I was just said. It's on the ground level. It's not above. If you look at the elevations.
And looking at the sections, it appears that part of it's up to 1 metre.
That's the deck. That's with the deck. That's the pool fencing.
Pool fencing, but that is above ground level?
That's the pool fencing. The pool is down here.
So you're saying the coping of the pool is here?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Can I invite you to comment on this plan, which shows the pool coping here? Is that correct?
No, that has to do with
So that pool, the pool shown on that is incorrect, wrong level.
It's coming down. It's on the ground now. On the ground level, the coping.
So it's just
Okay. So
drawing over.
if the swimming pool is at a lower level between the alfresco areas, it's the boundary fence.
That is correct.
The alfresco areas are raised.
Yes.
So what is the height of the fencing?
I think the maximum with the legally could be 2.4.
Sorry.
I had one other question. Unless there are other privacy
No, that's fine.
questions. Just wondering if you could explain, please, the purpose of the raised roof above the garage, which gives a floor-to-ceiling height of 4
Sure.
metres for the garage.
Sure. We want to dress up to the streetscape because the site is going so much down. If we don't make a big volume of it, it's just gonna looks really out of proportion.
Are there other options available to do that other than continuing a 4 metre high floor to ceiling? So, for example, you know, a feature such as that, so that from the street you can see something, but whether or not
Absolutely.
that's actually
Yes.
necessary.
Yes, I think that could be considered. So you mean just bring up the front facade rather than the whole volume?
It was really asking about what was the reasoning behind that higher roof height over the front part of the development, whereas for the balance, it's at a lower level.
It's also the impression of people coming into a lobby, because some people like avoid a double space. This is not a void. It's only like a meter above a normal. It's the so-called wow factor when someone walking into a place.
Wow factor.
Wow factor.
See.
That was sort of said for me.
All right, the cabanas,
Yeah.
are they necessary?
It was on the brief, client's brief, but I'm sure it's not that necessary. Because I saw some of the submission concern.
So they're not a must-have. All right.
Me personally, I'm happy with the more landscaped areas.
Hi, ma'am, I've got a question. What are the constraints to designing a driveway with an acceptable grade, and how might that be overcome?
That is a very steep side at the front. We take the approach, put the garage on the upper level. I think it's actually very suitable to that particular side. If we put it on the bottom, it will cost dramatic. It basically it's not work. It's not going to work. I understand some of the submission neighbors worry about the driveway. Some were saying if the driveway being too steep, and if there is another floor on top of the garage, that will be a bit just too bulky. But the reason I think is the notification plan sent out to the neighbors doesn't actually show the internal layout. People generally think the garage is on the bottom level and bedroom on the top level. But if they read properly, the garage is actually being on the upper level.
Can I get a clarification? No, that wasn't actually the question I was asking. What,
Yeah.
if the garage was to remain on the level that it's proposed, what, and an acceptable grade of driveway was able to be designed, what constraints would have to be overcome in terms of the layout of the building to accommodate an acceptable grade with the garage on the level that's proposed?
I'd say without lifting it up, probably have to push it a bit further back. So it will allow a little bit more, like a longer driveway to play with, to lower the gradient.
The other question I have is,
Just add one more thing. If the cabana is removed, I think we have more space to move the whole building towards the back.
right. Yeah, that's interesting. The other question I had was that you're working on the assumption that there will be no level footpath, say 1.5 metres away from the curb. If there was to be provision for a future footpath, the grade could only start to slope down probably around about 1.5 metres from at the least from away from the road, which would create a much greater challenge for the grade of the road. Have you taken that eventuality into account?
I think the council decided not to put the walk path on that side. They consider it's being not suitable for a walk path. It's not safe. I mean, people push a pram or wheelchair.
Is there any evidence that that's the case?
There's no, but other driveway along the same street, they're very steep start from the very beginning, because otherwise there is no way to achieve a reasonable.
Well, I think the point we're trying to make is if there was a footpath, say 1.5 metres in, then your driveway grade, you transition from here, which makes that a steeper proposition.
Like what I said before, we probably have to push.
The council's not going to excavate in its footpath. So what Mr. Brockhoff's interested in hearing from you is how you would come up with a design solution that accommodated a future footpath, the provision for it. Now, you also heard Mr. Levy ask you about this element here.
Yeah.
If you deleted that, which means that you could possibly raise this, so you effectively lower the overall bulk and height of the building, but you then raise the floor of the garage, so you get a more even grade, a more gradual slope.
Sure.
Have you thought about that?
I think it's really workable.
Right.
It's a good suggestion.
Right.
No, that's fine. That was a question.
Mr. Marks?
Oh, just briefly, one of the matters that was identified as non-complying was the minimum frontage for a detached dual occupancy.
Yeah.
I take it from your opening submission that you attempted the idea of an attached dual occupancy, but in your words, it was going to be too bulky.
Yeah.
And is that why you've gone with this proposal?
Yes.
Even though it doesn't comply with the minimum frontage?
Yes, and on top of that, there are other development with the same frontage has been approved with detached duplex, which was attached on the handout I just gave up.
Oh, the one at Waratah Street?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. And in comparison, those developments actually give the street a 3-story sort of impression, while we don't. We only, being going down, we only actually see 1 story. So I think much less imposing on the streetscape.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me speak.
We also have registered Mr. Tim Stewart. Mr. Stewart, please come forward. Now, obviously you've heard the comments from the neighbour and you've heard the comments from Ms. Chen, and obviously the matters that have been raised by the panel. So
some of my comments are redundant, so I'll try and strip, given your conversation.
Thanks very much.
I just wanted to talk about a few of the threshold assessments in the report and build on what JC has said to perhaps just look at the trajectory of the total assessment. One being, we felt that the landscape area does comply, and there might be some surface issues that can be rectified to ensure that. But that went on to lead to a threshold finding of non-compliance with the objective of the foresource scenic protection area. And I think some of those things can be perhaps tempered back, assuming that there were some misunderstandings or errors. And obviously there were some amended plans as well. I spoke today with the traffic engineer, and he pointed out that there is a clause 2.6.2 within the standard does allow for provisions on steeply sloping residential sites, and that would lead to a certification by a qualified person just to make sure.
Sorry, that's the Australian standard?
Yeah.
What's that again?
Clause 2.6.2. I've read it. What it acknowledges is sometimes there are sloping residential sites, and it basically says that as long as it's safe and sustainable, a qualified engineer can sign off on that basis. Now, I don't offer that to discount the other suggestions you were just talking about, but that was also a possibility that he said that there could be, well, there would be a complying solution to that. I guess that these issues, obviously you had an internal referral from the engineer plus the landscaped area. They sort of put the report on a serious trajectory to refusal, and I can understand that. But I guess I'm in support of the whole thing, putting my foot in the door a little bit and suggesting that they went on to inform the fact that we couldn't use the east-west lot orientation concessions that are generally available. So having had that removed in the whole solar assessment and the impact, I felt was a little bit harsh in the context. So I just wanted to reopen that as a possibility. And then the wall height issue was obviously that's a product of a sloping site. You know, obviously a design would, wherever possible, attempt to minimise that. But as you cascade down a hill, there are often bits that would exceed the 6.8 metre limit, I think it was. I'm pretty sure you've touched on all the other sort of the smaller design issues, but I wanted to, I guess, reopen the east-west concessions on those lots if possible for your consideration.
Yeah. I'll just see if there's any questions. Absolutely. No. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much for your submission. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes that matter. A decision will be taken later today and published on the Council's website. Moving to the second item on our agenda, which is the modification application for the partially constructed dwelling at 42 Carwar Avenue, Cars Park. Now, registered to speak, we have four speakers. First speaker is Mr. Phil Perkins. Mr. Perkins, please come forward. If I could ask you to speak directly into the microphone.
No problem. Good evening.
Thank you.
My name is Phil Perkins and I'm a resident of 5 Erang Street at Cars Park. I'm here to address the panel this evening regarding 42 Carwar Avenue, which is a property directly behind our property, 5 Erang Street. There are multiple concerns I have regarding this modification, and we'd like to focus primarily on the privacy issues that have arisen due to the difference in originally approving under the approved dwelling under DA 86 2014 to the application before the panel today. Under the original plans, and the area of most concern has the rear terrace 1.42 metres above ground level. The amendment now has the height of that rear terrace at 2.92 metres. I do note in the current LPP report there have been multiple adjustments to finished floor levels and roofing levels. The explanation given is that there were incorrect interpretations of the original DA. This is over double the height that was given in plans to residents prior to the approval. How such a gross miscalculation was made, I think needs to be addressed, and I believe this has impacted our privacy greatly. The report makes several references to one of the exceedances being only 0.74 of a metre, and that impact as being minimal to the privacy of our property. I tend to dispute that finding. As you can see from the visit today, privacy impacts from the as-built structure are quite significant. If the terrace had been built, or if the house had been built and that terrace was in accordance with the original plans, those impacts would be minimal. There's no concession in this report to minimise those current impacts on our property. And the inconsistencies with this application compared to the original DA, in my opinion, far greater than what is considered minor as highlighted in the report. These include, but are not limited to, the roofing structure, the height above ground level of the terrace, and the addition of a third storey. Whilst there are other multiple properties within the area that are said to be of similar bulk and size, I would doubt that any would have been approved with such privacy issues that we're faced with. All living areas of our property are impacted by this privacy, as well as the functional bathroom area. A couple of points out of the report, if I could draw your attention to. Point 95 discusses the elevated terrace and the inevitability that there will be some overlooking into adjacent properties. I accept that this is true, but to have absolute zero privacy into our backyard is best described as unacceptable rather than not desirable. Points 139 and 140 of the report state that the proposed development will only have minimal additional impacts upon adjacent properties, and the issues raised by us, the neighbours, do not warrant refusal and have been minimised through the design changes and further conditions of consent. Unfortunately, there's no concessions given to our aspect or any other conditions that mitigate these privacy issues that I speak of this evening. The report's given highlights multiple non-compliances given by the council. I don't have the expertise to elaborate on the background of each. However, I ask the panel to consider that if this as-built structure had been put forward to the council for approval originally and prior to being constructed, would it even be close to being approved? That's it.
All right. I'll just see if there's any questions of the panel.
No.
No. Thank you.
No,
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
your time. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Lister and Con Sinifit Otis. Please come forward. Thank you, ma'am. Just if you could just speak straight into that.
Mr. Collins basically summed up a lot of our concerns as well, so I'll just keep mine short. It's the overshadow issue. Has the shadow diagram been updated to conform with this application? Summer we have increased the radiant heat and from the building, and in winter we have lack of natural sunlight. You know, which leads us to have the air conditioning going basically all day. Solar panels will not be in benefit because the building is overshadowing the northwest aspect of our roof. And this has become quite apparent over the last 2 to 3 years as the building has still not been, you know, completed. Is the shadow report based on structure as built versus under original DA? And our other main concern is a lack of privacy. It's a major issue. You know, everybody can see into our backyard and our pool area, and into from their windows they can see right into my lounge upstairs. So there's no privacy at all. I can't even walk out into the backyard. They're my major issues, and like I said, Mr. Collins basically summed up all the other concerns.
Right. I'll just see if there are any questions.
Okay.
Mr. Levy?
Yes, with those concerns about the privacy,
Yes.
is that from the side of the balcony?
Yes,
The
and the
what's
windows.
currently open at the
Yeah.
moment?
Is that the, what do they call that? the back area.
balcony or al fresco.
Whatever, the alfresco, yes.
And are there other windows, since there is a building there, that also give rise to privacy concerns?
There is one, I think it's the laundry now, which looks into my bathroom upstairs, almost into my bathroom. That was where they had the steps going up, and they've demolished the steps and they put in a laundry window, I think it is now. And also from the other side window, that looks right into my upstairs, into my lounge, where my little balcony is up the top. When you're sitting there, you can look, I can see them, yeah. Yes.
That's all. Thanks.
No, I've got no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vaz?
No, nor do I, thank you.
One question, you mentioned solar panels. Your house does have solar panels.
No, it doesn't. But if, even if we were to put them, because of the overshadowing, there'd be no benefit.
Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you, for your section, man. Our next submitter, Gregory Anderson. Please come forward, sir. Please take a seat. If you could speak directly into the microphone. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Greg Anderson and I live in 7 Orang Street, which is diagonally at the back of the property that we're discussing today at 42 Kawa. I've had a whole pile of things written about the original plans and the 1.2 metres that are now 2.9 metres and the difficulties that's created for particularly the properties at the back. If I could just add there, that when I go out to barbecue, I now look at a structure that is like a large viewing area, and that looks directly down on my barbecue. And in the cabana, when we eat, I look straight up, and that view, I believe, wouldn't be anything like that if the property had been built according to its original dimensions. So the change in dimensions, I think, has caused a big change in the privacy issues for particularly the back properties. I understand the side properties, there's going to be some windows or shutters that they're proposing, but at the back, that won't change anything as far as I'm aware by reading those plans. The other issue is that the building just visually dominates the block for the people that surround it. The profile of the building is such that when I look at something, I say how big it is. This is an as-built structure, some 17% bigger than the allowable floor space ratio, which according to the plans is 52.2 square metres in excess of what it should be. When I look at a house, I talk about bedrooms and I get some idea of size. I went on the net and had a look at what a standard bedroom is in Australia, and according to Built Search, the average size bedroom is about 3 metres by 3 metres. That puts it at 9 square metres. When I look at a property that's 52 square metres over the allowable size, I then end up with a house that has about 5 extra bedrooms. In terms of my concept of how big this place is. And I am perplexed when I read section 138 of the council, and it says that it's an appropriate scale and form for the site, because it's enormous. And I can't come to grips with that. The other thing is that I've been a resident of Cars Park for 43 years. I just think the integrity of the building code is paramount, as if the lifestyle of existing residents is to be protected, and we hope to maintain the character of Cars Park. I worry about the precedent set when the council is recommending here, I'm just about finished, if the council is recommending here that we approve this change DA, because the as-built structure is so different from what originally we as a group in the community accepted, and the number of non-complying variations, I got tired of reading it. There's 64 pages. I'm exhausted. and I'm not an expert, get my mind around all those changes. The point I'm trying to make is that from my perspective and the homeowners surrounding that property, it is far too large for the site, and the number of really variations that are causing problems for local residents is great.
What would be the ultimate outcome for you?
I think that's
It's a hypothetical
I
question,
think that's a very difficult question to ask of a resident. I rely on my council and the group of people, such as yourself, to make fair and reasonable decisions. I don't want to be here. I never come to council meetings, and that's probably a problem I have, that I'm not enough in the community, but I don't see it's my issue to resolve something that is basically not meeting basic requirements. Parts of that structure are non-complying, and some of the non-compliance is in terms of, I know the neighbour across the road took 9 months with Cogra Council to get a 10 centimetre variation, so it would save him $20,000 in his air conditioning. After 9 months, it was knocked back. This property here is about the same distance above the height, yet it seems you mentioned that's a 1% variation. The fellow across the road from me spent 9 months, up $15, and still wasn't allowed to build that structure.
Right.
So I don't want to make a comment, it's not my job. Do you appreciate that?
It was a hypothetical.
Yeah.
With respect to your privacy concerns, would it be the case that if certain devices or certain modifications were made to the building that addressed your privacy, would that be acceptable?
Well, it would ameliorate some of the problem, but my issue here is as a long-term resident in Carrs Park, there is a building code.
Yeah.
What is going on when I view a set of plans and 4 years later, it's a changed structure. I don't care what the council says.
I accept what you're saying, but as a panel, we have to then balance the interests of the neighbourhood,
Yes.
as well as the proponent.
Yes, yes.
And yes, that's in the context of the council's controls, which are what you've spoken about. So I guess what I'm asking is if this panel was to make a determination to put certain safeguards in place to modify this building, would that address some of your concerns or all of your concerns?
It would address some of my concerns.
Good. All right. Mr. Levy, do you have any questions?
Similar to the question that you asked, if I could just confirm which is your property. You were saying you were diagonally.
I pop up to,
Yeah,
see
sure.
it.
So you're on the eastern side of number 5, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, we're on the eastern side.
Towards Cogra Bay?
Yes, towards
right.
Cogra Bay.
Okay.
That's this property, the Pearls there, and
Yes.
this property, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's my property. just
Right.
there on the
Okay,
right,
and
it's Pearls.
that's where we...
Can I just note that, there's the barbecue is there, and there's the.
So that's Perkins there,
That's Perkins.
Yeah.
and that's Anderson there. Okay, okay, all right. That's all. Mr. Brockman?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Martins? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that a decision will be taken later today by the panel and published on the council's website. That now concludes the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel. I thank you for your attendance and thank you for your submissions. Well, no, not registered. Not registered.